Well, yeah, I'm really excited for this one. Fran Racioppi, thank you so much for joining us, the Jedburgh podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and thanks for coming to my house and doing this.
Yeah, I know. This is a great
so much
setup.
easier.
This is a fantastic setup that you have here. We're out in your, is this your man cave?
I call it the war barn.
The war barn.
So, but my wife would call it a playroom. My kids would call it a playroom. My daughter would call it the spot where she goes to hide.
Yeah.
And then I've toyed between, maybe it's a gym, or maybe we can keep it this concept. I don't know, the war barn where I can come out and hide from everybody else. So that's what we've been doing.
This is where you can do all your research. You've got a nice wood burning stove here, keeping us warm.
Well, no insulation, so we had to fire that thing up and see how hot we can get it in here on that thing.
Yeah. Well, look, we met a couple months ago, and we've been planning this. So I'm really happy that we were able to put this together and get it going.
I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah. So the Jedburgh podcast. Let's talk about the name.
All right.
What is Jedburgh?
So the Jedburgh was an organization that was created in World War II. In 1943, primarily in May, late spring, early summer, May 1943, the war by and large was lost. The Germans had invaded France. They'd occupied all of France. They were entrenched. They had superior machine guns. They had superior equipment. They were bombing London. And the Allies came together, and I really identified that there are only a couple of ways to defeat the Germans. Really, one of the very few options, and the one that rose to the top was the invasion of Normandy and Operation Overlord. So Operation Overlord was concepted, but when the Allied commanders looked at actual execution of this, they identified that with the speed of German reinforcements down onto the beaches of Normandy, the chance of success was little to none. So they came up with a concept where they needed what they called visionary leaders. I call it drivers of change. They also called it transformative leaders. And they needed an organization that they could put together who would disrupt by means of subversion, sabotage, or whatever means necessary, stop the German reinforcements from coming down into Normandy. So they came up with what they called Operation Jedburgh. Operation Jedburgh was a place in northern Scotland. So they recruited from each of the armed forces of the U.S., France, and Britain. They recruited every country had 100 men. They took them from anywhere in the military.
How many did they get total?
300 total. Numbers vary depending on who you talk to, but the somewhere between 300 and 400 people total. And they created 3-man teams. And on each one of these 3-man teams, you had one American, one British, one French operator. And they trained them up, and they sent them, starting the night before D-Day, they parachuted behind enemy lines into occupied France. Their job was to link up with the French resistance forces that had been developed through the OSS and all throughout France. And the Jedburgh teams would link up with the different OSS operatives and the French resistance elements. They would train them, they would equip them, and then they would conduct these sabotage and subversion operations against German reinforcements as the Allies invaded on D-Day, and then the subsequent several weeks and months going until they got everybody onto the Normandy beach and then pushed into France. And so that's what these guys did. They parachuted in, started the night before D-Day. They did it for every night. 3-man teams parachuted in, and they began to blow German supply lines, destroy fuel trucks, destroy tanks, hit the German camps at night, real quick, hit them, it caused some casualties. Down trees was a big one where, the Germans would have large tank formations rolling down the German roads. They'd down a tree in the front one, and then, the Germans would have to figure out how do we actually get by this down tree. They'd start clearing that obstacle, and then they'd drop a tree behind them, or they'd blow bridges, and then they would prevent the Germans from being able to get across the various rivers down into there. And so there are stories about this operation where normal movements, which would have taken 2 to 3 days for the Germans to make unimpeded, were taking anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks and they were getting hit with massive casualties along the way, because as they were then stuck in these problem sets trying to figure out how they're going to solve it, the Germans, then the French resistance and the Jedburghs would hit them from behind, inflict casualties, disappear into the woods, and then go off and try to do it again. So an amazing operation of what we call visionaries, drivers of change, transformative leaders, those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge. When I came up with the Jedburgh podcast about this time last year, I was thinking of a name because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to interview people today who are making an impact in their industry, whatever their industry is, whether they're an entrepreneur, a founder in business, whether they're an athlete, professional sports, Olympic sports, whatever, or coming out of the military, or social activism, journalism, wherever they came from. If they're creating an impact and they're dedicated to persevering, solving challenges, and creating impact in their world, I wanted to tell that story. And I thought about my career in special operations, my lineage, had studied the Jedburghs, knew the lineage of the special forces comes out of the Jedburgh teams. And I said, oh, this is a perfect name.
Yeah. I was going to ask, where did you learn everything that you learned about the Jedburghs? It sounds like in the military.
Well, the Jedburghs, so after World War II, at the conclusion of the war, the Jedburgh organization actually then became the CIA was stood up, and the CIA was stood up as kind of the secondary effort after the OSS, or the Office of Strategic Service. And the CIA began, and the Jedburgh organization, who was closely aligned with the OSS, then became the operations directorate of the CIA, the paramilitary arm that actually went out and began to execute operations on the ground, and taking the intel that came from the OSS and then executing it on the ground. The U.S. Special Forces, the Green Berets, started by President Kennedy in 1952, were an offshoot of the Jedburghs into the OSS operations directorate, and then the action arm of that world became the Special Forces.
How long were you in the military? You were in the United States Army. I
was in the Army. I was in 10th Special Forces Group, and I served a total of about 12 and a half years.
Yeah. And how old were you when you joined the Army?
I joined the Army in 2003. I was 23.
Yeah, so right out of school.
So right out of college. I'd gone to Boston University. I studied broadcast journalism. I wanted to be the next Tom Brokaw. He was my hero.
Was he?
And I remember watching him all as a kid and saying, wow, that's just an amazing career, an amazing job. And can you get up there and report the news and talk about what's going on in the world? And there's so much impact you have in journalism, and being able to tell people's stories, and being able to present, back then, much more than today, objectively, much more objectively than lives today, what's actually going on in the world, and then allow people to think for themselves, and make their own determination. And Tom Brokaw was just so excellent at that. And I went to school. I said, I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to be a reporter. And then 9/11 was my junior year. And 9/11 happened September of my junior year. And I actually looked at that and I said, I got to go be a war correspondent. I mean, I can go there. Why would I sit I don't want to be Tom Brokaw sitting in the anchor chair. I can go be one of these guys running around, and chasing the war in some conflict zone. And then for the next couple of years, in 2001, into 2, into 3, you saw what unfolded, especially in the early days of Afghanistan in the fall of 2001, where U.S. Special Forces, the Green Berets, went in October of 2001 in Afghanistan. And I watched these guys with beards and long hair, riding horses, saving the world, and truly making an impact. And I started thinking at that point, whoa, those guys are doing it.
Yeah.
And then there's reporters there and they're covering it, but I'm like, whoa, well, maybe I could go do that. And then I could be a reporter later. And then in 2003, we went into Iraq. And when we went into Iraq, we created what was called embedded journalism. First period of time where you actually had reporters sitting on tanks, sitting during I'm talking about the initial invasion, sitting with military units where it was real. We had seen in the Gulf War in 91 was the first, they called it CNN war, satellite war, right? Where you were able to see via satellite TV and cable television, this 24/7 news, right, about what was going on. Afghanistan reporters were there, but they weren't with the troops. In Iraq, they were there, and you saw firsthand what was going on. And so watching that, I started thinking, man, I need to go do this. I need to be the other guy. I need the other guy on the other side who's actually creating that impact and making that change right now versus reporting on it. And then I watched Geraldo Rivera. And I'll say this, and maybe Geraldo one day will listen to this because I want to get Geraldo on my show.
Yeah.
Right? But I watched Geraldo Rivera, and he was with an infantry squad. I don't remember if they were Marines or the Army. And they got into a firefight. And Geraldo pulled out a pistol, and which he wasn't supposed to have because reporters, are non-combatants.
Right.
And he ends up falling down. He tripped. He fell because they're running through the street. And then he starts getting yelled at by all of these infantry guys. And they're like, what are you doing, you idiot? Why do you have a gun? Get up. You're going to get killed. And I saw that. And that was like the defining moment where I said, nope, not going to be that guy.
Yeah.
Got to go be the other guy. If I want to go into journalism, if I want to be a reporter, if I want to be Tom Brokaw, I can do that later. And I'll take all these experiences that I had, and then I'll wrap that up. It'll set a foundation, and then eventually I'll go do that. And that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah. Why specifically the Army, though? Like, what was it? Was it specifically because it was those special forces folks that you saw or met? Because there's special operations in each branch. Like, what was it about the Army that called to you?
Yeah, I think it was the Green Berets. It was the mission of the Green Berets. So I did my homework. My dad will tell me, and probably I think doesn't say it anymore, but certainly would tell me all the time you should have gone in the Air Force.
Is he an Air Force guy?
He wasn't, no, but you think about the Air Force and his experience growing up. He had seen conflicts where you could go, if you're an Air Force guy, I mean, it's a good life, but a lot of the times, right? You got crew rest. Now all the Air Force people will come after me after I say this.
I know, right?
But you had situations in the 90s in like Bosnia where you're an Air Force pilot and you're launching out of Italy and you're flying into Bosnia. You're running missions and you're coming home and you're picking your kids up at school.
Yeah.
And you're having breakfast and dinner at home. And then, and in the day, you're conducting real world, combat operations, which was pretty cool. Not that way so much, being in the Army, and certainly being as a Green Beret, right, where you're going to deploy and you're going to be there, and you're going to be there until someone tells you to come home or the mission's accomplished. There's an element of the mission of Green Berets that I believe is one of the most critical and important missions in national security. And I think a lot of people, when they look at special forces, they think to themselves, primarily because my brother's in the SEALs and I make fun of the SEALs a lot, but I have a lot of SEALs, man. And look, they're great. They're a phenomenal organization. And I just was giving a talk 2 weeks ago, and I said the two greatest organizations in the world, U.S. Navy SEALs and U.S. Green Berets. But people think a lot of times when they think about special forces that you're a door, what we call a door kicker. Yeah. You're going to go up, you're going to helicopter in, fast rope onto some building, blow a door with some explosives, go in, shoot everybody in the room, and then, get back on the helicopter and leave. And that's not really the case. Yeah. There's a very small percentage of those operations that actually go like that. There's units that are very focused on doing that.
You guys are
the quiet professionals. Is the name. And that comes back to the mission set. And the mission set primarily is what we call unconventional warfare. And that's the overthrow of a government or occupying force. And that's really important. You have an established government or you have an occupying force. Occupying force is something like we saw with the Taliban. Right. Not a recognized government. Well, I say we see again. Not a recognized government, but occupies control of the country. So the Green Berets' mission is to conduct through sometimes sabotage, subversion,
going back to the Jedburghs,
unconventional warfare. And how do we, and you can also, people call it guerrilla warfare. How do we partner with people who are indigenous to that nation to train them, equip them, and then conduct combat operations with them to affect the change that the U.S. government wants within that country? sometimes, like we saw in Afghanistan, that's done very kinetically, meaning with use of force.
Right.
Where if you look at Afghanistan in 2001, the Taliban was defeated in 3 weeks by about 5 special forces team and the power of the U.S. Air Force. We can argue all day long what happened from that point forward,
right.
but combat operations in that country against the occupying force were affected very, very quickly to a very high degree of success. That mission is so important with what we do. And then there's some other missions within special forces called foreign internal defense. So going primarily what we do in Africa. We go to Africa, we train, and what I had an opportunity to do for almost 2 years in Africa, which is to go there and build what we call partner nation or African nations special operations capabilities. Is there a part of this country, whatever country that may be or wherever it is, where we can train them and we can equip them by sending our teams and our operators there, and then make them better so that they can go out and what I call solve their own problems in the future. And there's something really important about that. There's something really impactful about that. Our resources, even though we're the United States of America and we can touch you, wherever we want, however we want, our political and diplomatic and military resolve sometimes only goes so far, and our resources, we are still resource constrained and we can't be everywhere in the world. One of the ways in which we are very successful in affecting change in areas where we can't or don't want to be is we train others to do that. And that is a primary mission of the special forces. And when you combine those things, you look at an organization that is made of people who are dedicated to success. They're dedicated to winning. I talk about it, in every episode. They're winning no matter the challenge. And that's what really intrigued me about being a Green Beret.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how long were you in? How many years did you spend serving in?
So I got out in January of 2016. I went in October of 2003.
Yeah.
So moved over about almost 12 and a half years.
Yeah, looking back, and right now you do a lot of executive coaching. It seems like you do give some talks. Like you're utilizing that skill in your everyday life now. But looking back, like what do you think? Let's say top three things that you're most grateful for that you don't think that you would have otherwise gotten had you not made that decision to be in the Army, but in Special Forces specifically, because you could have done anything in the Army. Sure.
Well, in my first couple of years in the Army, I was in the infantry.
Well, yeah.
And because as an officer, so I went to officer candidate school, and as an officer, you can't go directly into the Special Forces. You go into another branch. You serve time. You're a platoon leader as a lieutenant, and then once you become a captain, then your window opens up, and you go to selection. And if you make it,
Can you be enlisted and go into Special Forces?
You can. You go through what's called the 18 X-ray program. So there's a direct entry program that exists where you can you can apply through the recruiter and go in and prepare yourself and then get in and do that. I'll give a plug. I won't call it a shameless plug, but I'll give it a plug for one of our sponsors, 18 Alpha Fitness, which actually has a fitness program which is designed for people who want to go to selection, whether it be to be a Green Beret, a Navy SEAL, a Marine Raider, Air Force combat controller, whatever you want to do. They actually have the entire fitness programs. You download their app. It's really cool.
So they're preparing you.
And they're preparing you. And it's started by a guy who I went to OCS with, who had been enlisted in the Green Berets, transitioned to become an officer, was in my OCS class, and then served with me in 10th Special Forces Group, Kevin Edgerton. And we're actually going to have him on in a couple weeks. I think we'll air his episode at the end of December. But yeah, so you can go directly in. There is an element of preparation, though, and the reason why I say all that is because you've got to be ready.
Yeah,
this isn't like going to apply for a job at the local pharmacy.
Right.
And I only say that because that was my first job, was in the pharmacy when in the town I grew up in. But certainly much different going in and trying to go to selection versus doing something like that.
But what are those things? What do you like looking back? Like, what are you most grateful for out of that experience in particular?
I think the first thing is perspective. You are given, and I know you talked to Chris Schmidt, and I'm sure he mentioned perspective a few times in your conversation, but I do a lot with Chris and Azimuth Leadership, and he's just great. He's been a great friend, a great mentor.
You guys were in the same unit.
Yeah, we served together.
Yeah.
And Chris has been kind enough to bring me into his work at Azimuth and the Traverse, and
I'm
we've
excited
done
to
some
go.
great things. All right, are you going to come?
Yeah.
You got it.
I've already signed up. I'll figure out how to get there, but next June I'll be there.
All right, good. Yeah, no, that's going to be a good time. I totally need to do a winter one too. Really make something of some people. But perspective you gain from being number one in the military, but then also being fortunate enough to make it and serve in special operations. I think it is unlike any other experience that you might, or a lot of people may have in the world. You see things and you see events. I spoke with General Stan McChrystal.
Right.
We released his episode 34, and he wrote a book on risk. It's called Risk: A User's Guide. Risk is the defining, I'll call it event, or that happened that every leader has to deal with. The military and special operations teaches you to identify, or what General McChrystal calls detect, assess, respond, and learn from risk in a way that you can't replicate, because you're constantly detecting and assessing risk. And that could be personal risk. It could be risk to your team. It could be risk, operational level risk, tactical risk, strategic level risk. You can be a special forces detachment commander or a junior guy on a special forces team and be one of 12 people in a country. And there's stories about this all the time. The actions you make, as simple as going out to a restaurant where you may argue with a waiter, you may get in a car accident, something may happen that may not have anything to do with you may have been a victim, can have strategic impact. So you gain a level of perspective that comes from your identification and classification of risk, because you're always looking at these different situations and having to figure out, what are my actions going to be? What do I need to do here? What's required of me? And then that allows you, I think, to become so grounded in so many ways that things happen around you when you get out. And you see people, I call it, your hair on fire, and they're running around, and it's the end of the world, and all these things are going wrong, and you're like, whoa, hey, stop. What's actually going on here? Okay. And what needs to happen? What's the end state that you're looking for? The military is great about identifying the end state. If you can identify the end state, you can figure out how to get there in a logical manner. What happens so many times when people don't have so many of these different experiences where they're always kind of using the same thought level process to get to the solution is that they just jump to, I've got to do something. I don't know what to do, so I just got to do something, right? Military teaches you to calm down, assess what's going on, figure out a plan, but always know where you got to get to. If you can do that, gain that perspective, then you are able to operate at a much higher, more effective level with a higher degree of result at the end. Yeah. I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is an appreciation. We call it gratitude. A gratitude for being an American. A gratitude for what we have and what we understand life is in this country. Go ahead.
Do you think that came from your ability to travel and see other places to have even more of a reinforced?
I do.
I
do, absolutely. Because we're insular in the U.S. The majority of the population is insular.
Yeah.
We live in a country that is surrounded by two oceans. I'm sure our northern and southern borders are there, but I mean, these are friendly countries to us. By and large,
Canada's not invading.
Canada's not invading us. We have, certainly we have border problems,
right?
And refugee crisis down on the southern border, and there's, the narco effect of drugs and the war on drugs that has happened in the southern border. But these are not at the strategic level. These are not our enemies. Okay, we do not have a threat to our border per se, right? We can argue, the next generation, the next battlefield of cyber and hybrid warfare, but in a physical threat, we don't have that. The rest of the world doesn't operate like that. When you're able to travel to the rest of the world, and you don't need to be in special operations to travel the rest of the world and gain an appreciation. I mean, you can go to places in Southeast Asia. You can go to places in the Middle East. You can go to places in Africa, and nice places in Africa. I mean, I've spent time in Tanzania. I've gone to Zanzibar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a resort. But you leave the resort and you go into downtown Zanzibar,
Yeah.
you still will gain an appreciation of, I mean, that's like Hawaii. But Zanzibar doesn't look like Hawaii downtown.
Yeah.
Does at the beach, maybe. But it's a different quality of living. Go to India. You know, there's so many places where you can go in the world and see that the standard of living that the majority of Americans are able and fortunate enough to live in, and what this country means in terms of freedom and our ability to speak our mind and our ability to have what I'll call, vocal discontent, right, that we've seen over the last couple of years, is unlike any other country in the world.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that in a lot of other countries.
Absolutely not.
Be that outspoken about the things that you dislike.
In superpower countries, you're not allowed to do that. Go to China. Go to China and have a protest. You can't.
They tried it.
Look what happened in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong technically is not part of China, but China cracked down on that.
Yeah.
And then
you got to be charged with Chinese law as a person of Hong Kong, which is not. It wasn't illegal in Hong Kong when you were doing that. You can protest in Hong Kong,
right?
But now you're being
not
charged
anymore.
with But even have you found? I want to. I don't want to take us off too much, but like I was thinking about some of these places, and you look at. They have, I guess, arguably so much less than us. But have you found, what about their happiness level? Are they content and happy without? Have you found some people? I mean, maybe not in the places where there's like an overpowering regime and it's making it a nightmare to live in. But some of these other places, like portions of India, portions of other countries in Asia, where they just kind of live simply.
Well, to some extent, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And just like here in the U.S., where you have a vast majority of the population who doesn't know much else outside of this country, it's the same in other countries. And so what do you know? You know what's in front of you. You know what you've been brought up on. You know what you've been raised on. You know what you see and what you experience. And unless you've had the opportunity to go see other things and experience other things, you don't really know the true effect.
Mm-hmm.
What is so impactful about understanding what the rest of the world looks like is you got to be there. We talk about this thing, now leadership from afar, over the horizon leadership. I got a hard time with that one.
What's meant by that, leadership?
Over the horizon leadership is what's kind of in the news right now as this concept. It's what they said they wanted to do the administration said they wanted to do in Afghanistan. We saw it. We saw it in 2009, 10, around then too, when with Libya situation, North Africa, which was, we can overthrow Muammar Gaddafi and we can do this kind of lead from behind thing. Really difficult conversation, I think, for me to have. I think a lot of leaders who understand that you got to be there. You can't lead from behind. It almost doesn't work in like the definition of it. The infantry in the army, their motto is "Follow me." Jump master gets in an airplane and gets everyone ready to go. And if it's a jump master led jump, right, they'll stand on the door, they'll stand at the ramp, and they'll wave their arm and yell "Follow me" and jump out, and everybody goes. That's how we understand leadership. Very hard to lead when you don't have ground knowledge. Similar to I interviewed Michael Scott Moore. Michael Scott Moore is a journalist and an author. He was captured by Somali pirates in Somalia on a research trip to write a book about Somali pirates. And then he subsequently spent 2 years and 8 months as a hostage in Somalia itself, and then a good amount of time on a ship off the coast. I was fortunate when I spent 6 months in Djibouti And I was fortunate enough to actually work on we would receive the updates on his situation, what we knew, the intel reports, and then was there a couple of times when there was an opportunity potentially to go get him. Unfortunately, we were never able to go get him. It just never lined up. It got close.
Yeah.
Got up to the president once or twice, but never able to actually get it done. But Michael Scott Moore, in my conversation with him and in his book, he talks about you don't know, you can read as much as you want. I think his quote is, you're not an expert because you read about it, right? You can read about a lot of things. You can see a lot of things on TV. You can see how other people live, and you can see famine in Africa. You can see, poverty in the Middle East or other areas of the world. Until you go there and you experience it and you see it, it's not real.
Yeah.
It's that appreciation when you come home and you get off the plane, and very quickly, regardless of how long you're gone, you'll still come home and get off the plane, hop in the car, go to the store, pick up what you want, go home, turn the air conditioner or the heat on, right? And quickly forget, wow, where was I? What was I just doing? But then you got to allow it to sink in, and you got to begin to appreciate what you have simply by being an American.
Right.
And simply by being fortunate enough to grow up in this country. And that is so important, and something that, as I try now to instill even in my kids, to understand that, what you have, this is not the rest of the world. And your ability to be upset is also an earned right.
Right. Yeah. So what are those three again? So we've got
so I only gave you two. So I got one more. So perspective,
right?
Gratitude was the second.
Okay.
So you had perspective and gratitude, and the third one is camaraderie. There's something that comes from being in a group of like-minded people for so long. That is very, very difficult to replicate.
Do you seek that out in your life now?
I think one of the biggest things that you lose, that you don't think about when you get out of the military, I know I didn't, is that all your friends, the people you identify closest with, the people that you spend more time with, even than your family, are no longer there.
Did you grieve that?
I think you do. I think you do. I mean, I remember grieving it the day I got out. I was driving off Fort Carson and looking in the rearview mirror, saying everything I know is there.
Yeah.
Everything I know is behind me. I think it sinks in after, though, over some time, where now you have to find new friends. You have to find a new life. You have to figure out. First, you got to figure out what you're going to do and who you're going to be, but then you also got to figure out who are those people you're going to surround yourself with. But there's a bond, there's a closeness, there's a shared suffering almost that comes from it. I talked to Olympic rower Jevy Stone, and Jevy Stone says that hard things bond people together more than easy things. And that's true.
That's camaraderie. We see that in so many different things. Like my own experience, I shared a little bit with you about that I'm sober, and going through that process of getting sober with people that are also new in recovery and just starting to change their life completely around. But there's a bond that's created there, and it's I found it in playing football, right? Training and playing with in groups of people. There's also just that's why those group. It's not group therapy. It's just people that understand. You brought it up a little while ago, is the fact that unless you're there, you wouldn't understand. There's no reason for me to write a book on pregnancy, because I'll never be able to do that, right? That makes no sense. But if you've been there and you have a shared experience, you're uniquely qualified to support each other and help each other in a way that no one else is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see that now with veteran suicide rates. In fact, we've been talking about it. I work with an organization called Sail Ahead. And I'm the race director for this organization here in Long Island. And we teach veterans how to sail as an alternative means to, at first it was about PTSD. And I think we've evolved into it builds camaraderie. Yeah. It gives you something to rally around. There's a sense of competitiveness in sailing. It's not physical. You can sail until you're old, and it's not going to physically affect you. But there's a competitive aspect of it. There's a new skill aspect of it. You still want to be around people who are competent, technically, tactically, who are just fun to be around. And so if you can create an environment where you can do that, then you can take people who are suffering from these effects, from loss of identity. Call it loss of identity is really what it is. And then when you lose your own personal identity, because for so long you identified as a soldier, a Marine, an airman, you name it. And now all of a sudden you're not. You were.
Yeah.
I was a soldier. I was an operator. I can wake up every day and think, well, I'm still that, and then I can go for a run and realize I'm not. But you got to grieve that, and then if at the same time you're losing those around you who are that support network, what we forget is that we were so close when we served together. How do we then replicate that after? Because just like we needed each other when we were in, we need each other now when we're out.
Yeah, there's a group called Jump for Valor that does something similar, especially if, like, it was started by some guys that were paratroopers, and they take people out for jumps, especially like the wounded, like people in wheelchairs, and they just strap them to a harness and they're jumping out of planes, and it's a lot of fun. But again, it's like, it's getting people together, probably in a way that they haven't for I don't know how long, right? If they just recently got out, it probably wasn't that long. But if they've been out for a while and they've just been suffering in silence with this loneliness, because that's really what it is. You can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely.
Absolutely,
that's very easy to do.
If you don't identify with them, you don't know anything.
And then we do this otherizing thing, and we can like live the entire conversation in our head and find all the ways how we're different. And all it takes is one person to kind of bridge that gap to realize that we're a lot more alike. Well, yeah, but how old were you when you got married? So were you single when you went in 2003?
So we were, so my wife and I went to college together. We met our freshman year.
At Boston?
Yeah, at Boston University, and we're together through college. Like every college couple had our ups and downs.
Did you play sports in college?
I did. I was on the men's rowing team.
Okay. Did you do that as a younger?
No, I played football and lacrosse.
Okay.
In high school.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one brother and one sister. Both are younger.
All right.
So I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. You did play sports.
I did.
When you were younger.
Yep.
What do you think that, like a lot of what you said, and obviously you were attracted to some other things with special forces and with the United States military, but even doing the leadership work that you do, what do you think playing sports as a younger child is doing for you now in present day? So
I attribute the majority of what I was able to achieve in the military in becoming a Green Beret to playing sports. I 100% believe that I would not have been able to become a Green Beret if I had not been a Division I college rower. But why though? What was it about it? Because there was an element of physical and mental toughness that's required to row at that level that I believe is very, very difficult to get. I don't think that there's any other sport that actually forces you to the level of physical exertion in the short amount of time as rowing. I was a walk-on. So I played football. I played lacrosse in high school.
What position did you play? Pretty tall.
I played center and defensive end.
Center?
Yeah, I was the smallest guy on the line. Height-wise, no, but by size-wise, yes. So the ability to go and play college football was, unless I went to a Division III school, maybe I could make it. But
I was funny.
Somewhat undersized.
I started playing center. That was my first. Because I haven't always been this size, but I was always this shape, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's where I started playing football, was as center, and then just kind of went as I lost a little bit more weight, got a little bit better at the game, started playing offensive tackle. Again, lost a little bit more weight, got a little bit better at the game, pulling guard, right? And then eventually in high school, I played second string fullback and second string linebacker, because there were people out there 6'6" and above that they would start. That's just the way that works.
Right. Yeah, we had a small school, so we were able to.
Yeah.
I was able to play a lot, but those were formidable times. I mean, there's an element of toughness that is created by playing sports, and I wasn't going to play at the collegiate level. And when I was applying to school, I decided that I wanted to go to the school that I knew that had the best academics, and that was Boston University for me. So I chose that, and then I said, well, if I don't play a sport, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do something stupid, and I need to go do something that's going to ground me. And so I contacted the freshman coach on the rowing team, and I said, oh, they allow walk-ons. Let me go see what I can do. And I ended up making the first freshman boat, and was kind of only up from there. And I had an amazing experience there in that I was forced to physically push myself to a point that I really didn't know existed, because you work hard in football for 15 to 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
That one play.
I played lacrosse, but I played defense. So again, I mean, there's an element of certainly working hard. There's a technical element in stick skills, which I never had. I was always terrible at ball handling, but I was a big guy. I could play defense well. And when people came in to try to score, my job was to just hit them and knock them over.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was very good at that. But again, you're not pushing yourself to rowing where you're in a complete lactic acid shock, and your body's going into convulsions because of the lactic acid buildup in your muscles, and your heart rate is so high that you get to a point where you can't breathe anymore because you're breathing so hard and so fast. Rowing does that to you. So rowing forces you to push yourself to the limit, forces you beyond that limit, teaches you that the point at which your body will shut down mentally, emotionally, and physically. You find that your mental will shut down first.
Yeah.
Well, probably your emotional side probably will shut down first and be like, oh God, I don't want to be here. This hurts. And then mentally you'll get in your head, this, I can't do it. And then how are you now talking to yourself? How are you preparing your mind at this point to push through that, right? Knowing that my emotions and my mental side are going to quit before my body actually will, even though I think my body is telling me it's going to quit first. It will actually go much further than I believe it will. And so having to train those things in unison and in parallel, finding those points at which each one of those components starts to shut down and you fail and you don't achieve a goal you set out to do, but now you've set a new bar and you've set a new limit and you understand where you have to get to. That's so important in setting a foundation for anything you do. And I know that when I had to then prepare to go into the Army, to prepare to go to Special Forces selection, to go to Ranger School, that was what was in my mind. Number one, nothing is going to be as hard as that was. Absolutely not. Nothing will do to me what a race does in rowing. And I now know, how do I physically prepare for something at the highest level? How do I emotionally prepare? How do I mentally prepare? I work right now with Boston University men's rowing team. In performance development. And so I speak with the coaches and the athletes weekly. And this is what we talk about. We talk about the physical and the emotional aspect of it. We talk about the things like characteristics that we need out of our athletes. We talk about the values, the vision. We talk about what I call table stakes. Things like you operate in and you compete in the top collegiate division. This is going to be hard. Yeah. So if you come here every day and you tell me it's hard, well, it should be hard. So let's stop talking about the fact that it's hard. Because
and there's a relationship between psychology and physiology. So like it's the way we're talking to ourselves, the body will respond. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you mentioned self-talk. I mean, are you an I am statement guy? Like I'm a big I am statement guy. Like I write down I am statements. Because I found that I am is the most powerful sentence that we can say to ourselves, right? In the English language, like whatever we insert after I am is going to be how we identify ourselves, and that's going to dictate. I found that it dictates not just where focus goes, energy flows. So that's where I'm going to start paying attention, and also my body. So like when I'm working out, I do a lot of CrossFit. When I'm running distances, I might be a little bit psycho, but like like I start have that mantra of I am, and I'm putting that in there to just keep going. Are you big on that? Do you coach that with those guys?
I coach them more. Yes, to some extent. I wouldn't put it in those words. I would say that my theory on this is the slogan that I have for my business and the podcast: "How you prepare today determines success tomorrow." I think it's you have to do the work. No one's going to do it for you.
Yeah,
and I think that is real in sports. It's real in life. It's real in work. We all have great ideas. Most people have great ideas. And the difference between people who are ultimately successful in life, in business, in their careers, comes down to the amount of work that they put in. A lot of people think, I'm struggling this with my daughter right now because she's 12 and everything is, well, that they've been doing that for a long time. Oh, they're a professional athlete. I can't do that. Okay, but they weren't always a professional athlete. They became a professional athlete because they put the time in. They put the work in. They put the work ethic in.
Yeah.
They dedicated themselves to this. They didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden they're a professional athlete and now the work went in.
Yeah.
So there's a path, there's a road. And when you wake up every day and you can, if it's the I am that motivates you, right, then use that. But what I talk to everybody about is, what do you have to do today that's going to determine how you start tomorrow? And if each one of those is deliberate, then you're putting yourself on a path to be successful. It's not going to be this up and to the right slope. Right. It's not going to be like that every day. Every day is not going to be better than the next. You're going to have down days. You may have significant spikes and crests and troughs where you wake up and you think all is lost. I'm in the wrong job. My family hates me. I have no friends. So many of these things are going to come up where you're going to have these and self-doubt. But how do you stop and just think this is part of the process?
Well, you're talking about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? If it's all part of the process, right, then you're still chipping away at it. Even on the down slopes day, you're still, you're still getting after it 1% better. That's kind of like what I talk about on this podcast. It's just 1% better every day.
Yeah, and then have your little pity party for a few minutes, and then say, okay, look, everybody doesn't hate me. My family doesn't hate me. I have friends, even if I have one, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not terrible at my job.
We can just get so selfish like that. Like, everybody hates me. They're not going to stop thinking about them to think about how much they hate me. But in my mind, it's just like, and it becomes so real, and it can take over our thoughts and paralyze us. It's a resilient attitude. It's a resilient mindset. We talk about resilience on the podcast a lot. And are you able to? The first step in resilience is really is humility, and the ability to stop, understand the situation that you're in, accept it, be honest with yourself, know that you're not where you want to be. Don't frame ideas around the ideal. You got to understand, here's honestly where I am. Here's how I got here. Now, how am I going to respond and get out of it? Yeah, it's a result of our actions, right? And humility is an accurate self-appraisal. So like me saying I'm the worst person in the world is also not an accurate self-appraisal, right? Just like I'm the greatest in the world. It's like, so it's funny how pride and ego, they're flip sides. There's two sides to that coin, right? And I found it, even just in my own experience, that to be humble, for some reason, for a very long time, I thought being self-deprecating meant that I was humble.
No, I was just going to say that. No, you don't. People, they'll resort to that. They'll say, oh, well, being humble means that, like, I'm not, that, I didn't do, or I didn't create the environment in which I'm in now, and it's good. Like everything is bad. Everything, I have to look at myself always through this critical lens, and everything is bad. And, you said self-deprecating, right? That, I need to be better. Here's all the reasons why I'm not good. No, if you did a good job, tell yourself you did a good job. You gotta own that. You gotta accept that. The element, the humility is understand in real terms the position you're in. So if it was good, awesome. Own it. Be happy about it. Celebrate it. Learn from it. I tell the guys on the men's rowing team, you go out there and you kick someone's ass and you win the race. Hey, let's celebrate. But tomorrow, now you better figure out what went wrong in that race.
Yeah.
Let's learn from the good. Let's build on it. Identify the opportunities when it's good or bad. And let's do better the next time.
Yeah.
But you gotta embrace the good.
Right. Train the brain to get used to that dopamine effect and to to chase that. I mean, I was almost like addicted to self-deprecating. I thought for sure I could self-deprecate myself into better behavior. It just felt like the right thing to do. That if I was that critical of myself, eventually I'd do better.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from, but it's never worked. And I think the method that you're talking about at least seems to work a little bit better for me. I mean,
Well, and also take time for yourself. I think there's an importance to that too. Some people schedule it. I fall victim all the time where, I'll go sit on the couch and it's 9:30 at night. And for the first 10 minutes, I start thinking, well, I should be doing these 5 things. If I was doing these 5 things, I'd be making progress. Forgetting about the fact that since 5:30 in the morning, I was doing all of these things and now I'm here. But you got to be able to disconnect for a little bit, even if it's for a few minutes. And then, you know what am I truly going to achieve tonight that I can't achieve tomorrow?
Right.
And am I at a point where whatever I do right now isn't even going to be that good?
Right. Yeah, I want to get back. So I we went off on a little bit of a tangent. It's my fault, but there I go, self-deprecating. So you met your wife. Was she a rower? Or was she an athlete in college?
No, she wasn't. Nope, she studied advertising. And no, but she came to all the races, and she was oftentimes the only one there.
And how long you guys been married? You get married pretty soon after college, or?
So we've been married since 2005. We've had a very interesting path
because you were deployed.
We spent a lot of time together apart. We spent a lot of time together. We spent a lot of time apart. The majority of my military career, I was gone. We went to college together, and like every college couple had our, times apart from each other and got back together. And then when I went in the Army, we were separated certainly for that. And then the majority of my Army career, we were separated, and we got married in 2005 after I graduated Ranger School, before I went to Iraq for the first time. And then I went to Iraq for a year, and then went to Special Forces, went back to Iraq for 2 more deployments, about 8 months apiece, and then came back from that, and I hadn't really been together, and so we actually spent a good amount of time apart after that. We separated for a long time, the better part of 7 years, and I missed a good portion of my daughter as a young girl. And whether it was being deployed in the first 3 or 4 years of her life, and then not living together and not being together until the subsequent 3-4 years after that, and we lived even when we lived in New York, for the majority of the time we lived in New York. And I was in business school. We didn't live together, and I had my own life, and they had their own life, and saw them a couple of days a week, and did what I considered was my fatherly duties. And fortunately, we have been able to since kind of rectify that. We've gone through our hardships, mostly imposed by me, more than anybody else. But we never totally broke. Pretty damn close. A couple of times, and always found a way to think about the bigger picture, think about the importance of raising our daughter, and now we have a son. That's an amazing byproduct of just never quitting and coming back, and now our family is for the first time in a long time is and definitely is probably stronger than it's ever been.
Yeah. What kind of work did you have to do on yourself to be this new person that was able to come back into their lives?
I think I had to lose it all.
Yeah. Like, did you do therapy? Did you work with someone else? I mean, like,
so I work with an organization called Headstrong.
Yeah.
And Headstrong is primarily a veteran service organization that works with veterans with mental health. You want to have mental health conversations and mental health challenges, and I was very fortunate to be linked up with them. And in, I believe, 2016, I think, 2016, 17.
Yeah.
And I have been working, with them since. And I believe that it's an incredibly valuable organization.
Yeah.
We can't solve everything on our own.
Right.
And, sometimes, I hop on my calls and, talk about, deep emotional, ways that I feel. And other times I just bitch about, scaling the podcast and trying to get advertisers and looking for guests. And, it gives you an outlet. And so talking to people, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we all need that. We need that separate from the person that we're in a relationship with, right? Because that person didn't sign up to be our financial advisor, our spiritual guru, our, whatever, our therapist. They signed up to be our wife or our husband, and that's, and we need that. We need that community where I can, I think that for me, I get a lot of that with the people that I got sober with and that are still in my life and that are a powerful force, because we all suffer through that. We talked about that earlier. There's something that happens when you suffer with another person, that you build a bond that I haven't found it anywhere else. I'm not saying that it won't exist. I don't know. And, but having that thought partner, that was Chris, like that was his big thing, but just having that community of people that I can be open, honest, vulnerable, and they know exactly who I am and all of the things that, not that I would never tell this other person, but just like they don't need me to be that person with them, right? They need another version of Phillip to show up. And it's only because I have that community of people that I get to have those conversations, whether it's me just complaining about something or really just talking about something that's going on with me, like something that like is, a deep fear of mine, like, that I can deal with that there and it doesn't land on the other person. And I can show up as the person they really actually need and want me to be. Mm-hmm. So that's huge, man. One thing I could sit here and talk to you all day, like I feel like, and I hope that we get a chance to really keep doing that. But there's one question that I ask everybody that's been on the podcast. It's about a jumping off point. It's a moment in time where you can no longer keep doing what you're doing, but you're uncertain of what to do next. And, some people have described it as a moment in time where at the time it was a horrible experience. It was either emotionally painful, physically painful, or both. And at the time they didn't want it to be happening. But now looking back, they're just truly grateful that they had that experience, because they wouldn't be who they are. They wouldn't have the people in their lives that they have. They wouldn't have the perspective on something that they have now. Whether it's career, it doesn't have to be about your job. It doesn't have to be anything. Maybe it's, I don't know. Just throw that out there to you.
That's a good question. You may have. I'm not used to being the guest, and I might. And a lot of times, the guest looks at me and they say, "That's a really good question," and then I always think, "I don't know. Are you just saying that because you're stalling for an answer?" And now I'm doing it to you. So I think life's a bunch of chapters. Your life's a book. Yeah. And each part of your life, is a different chapter. And so just like your life has certainly a beginning and unfortunately an end. And within each one of those chapters, there's a defining moment. There's defining chapters that will open and will close. And as we get older and have more experiences, we write new chapters that begin and end. I think it would be easy for me to say that the defining moment, for me would be, going into the special forces. I think certainly, that's a big one. I would honestly tell you that, I think that the defining moment for me was probably losing my job at Snap. I think was a big one.
Yeah.
Very, very unfortunate. I tried to do too much. I tried to push the envelope too hard. I tried to, both professionally and personally. I didn't take the cues that I was seeing about, the organization not ready for change in the way that I was trying to bring change, and started pissing people off. And I'm like like we talked about the podcast. I'm an agent of change. I'm a transformative leader. I'm a visionary. I want to win at all costs, and I don't do well often when there's roadblocks in the way. And sometimes, especially if you're new to an organization, if you don't understand fully, what we call in special forces, number one, understand your operational environment. And when you violate that principle, things can go wrong very quickly, and sometimes you might not be mature enough or humble enough to see when that's happening. And I think that certainly that was an experience in my life where I did that, and that combined with my personal situation with my not being together with my family, all came to one end fairly quickly, and that was something that it took a long time to get over. But I will say that I tell you, you have to hit bottom. And I think you, with your experience in your life, and can attest to that. That one point, you're standing at the bottom of the well, and you're like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
I've lost everything I have. Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
And for me, that was a moment where I looked back on my life, and I always thought about the person and the people that I wanted to be. And I had to ask myself the hard question of, am I that person right now? And I would be lying if I said, in a day, you're like, yeah, I am. I'm not this person, today I changed. No, that takes time.
Yeah.
But if you ask yourself over a period of time enough, am I who I want to be? Am I living the values and the life that I want? Am I doing right for me and the people that I love? And then take the cues. Who's still there? And who are the people that are still looking at you saying, we're still here for you. If you want us, and you want this support, we're still here and we can do this. And I was able to do that, and it took a while.
Yeah.
Certainly. But when eventually I kind of turned around and was like, I'm not who I want to be. I'm not who I always said I was going to be.
Yeah.
And now I have, mistakes and hard lessons learned and battles fought. And now, go be the person you want.
Yeah.
Go do the things you want to do. Do it with the people you want to do it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be happy. Someday it's not going to be as glamorous or glorious as, you might, but you squandered that. You already lost it. You're not getting it back.
Do you find yourself having a sense of gratitude that you actually went through that and had that, because you wouldn't be the person you are now or doing the things you are now had that not been the case?
Yeah, I think in the long run, I got a way to go. I lost a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I know.
A tremendous amount of money that, is you're never going to get back, and
Yeah.
it will take a long time to recover from. But life's not about money. Life for me is about impact. And life for me, I think at one point probably may have been about that, but I think for me it's about, who do I bring impact to? Whose life can I make better, even if it's in one small way.
Yeah.
One small piece. Can you take one thing away from talking to me, listening to me, interacting with me, that makes you, yourself, your team, your organization better? And can I do that for my family too?
Yeah.
Then every day I wake up and I say I've been given I'd say, not even a second, probably a third shot, at getting this thing right. What choices are you going to make today? And we talk about that with the guys at BU, and Kristen Holmes from Whoop, and her and I spoke about it. Performance is a choice. And when and Kristen had a great perspective on performance as a choice that she took with her, she built with her field hockey team at Princeton. But I say that you have a choice to perform, but your choices also affect performance. So when I wake up every day, I think, okay, today I have to choose how I'm going to perform, whether it's professionally or personally, and now know that every choice I make, what I eat, what I drink, my behavior, is going to affect my performance and those around me. And if I can stay somewhat centered on those things and think big picture and focus on what I got to do today to be successful tomorrow, then I think we get there.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. Well, look, I really appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me and giving me this chance to come by to your house.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah, it's been great. We only had to refill the fire one time.
Yeah, I know. And thanks for having this here and nice and warm. And well, look, I'm down in DC, and a lot of government contractors, a lot of tech firms, a lot of people that can benefit from having someone like you come in and speak to their teams and talk about the stuff that you talk about with BU and everything else. What's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it through FR6? Is it through the talent group?
Yeah, either way. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Fran Racioppi, on Instagram. I think it's Racioppi Fran, or Jedburgh Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. LinkedIn has a page too. We have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
A YouTube channel for the Jedburgh Podcast and for FR6. My website's fr6.com, FRSIX.com. But yeah, any of those means will find me.
Yeah.
Or through Talent Work Group. Yeah.
We'll make sure we put links below the show. So yeah, well, thanks for doing this, man.
All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.